Welcome in, everybody, to Beyond the Beat with 32 Beat Writers, part of the Player Profiler network of podcasts. It's good to have you guys here with me this week. I was out last week for week one due to whatever in the heck is going around up and down the eastern seaboard here. It seems like everybody I know has been sick, and my family pretty hard. So if I sound a little off today, that is why. But hey, we're back on the horse and hopefully going to be bringing you a good show today. Just so that everybody knows. Wow, I had the intro music on loop. That was great. Just so everybody knows, I'm going to be doing a weekly recap for you. Going to try to get out a little earlier in the future, but we're going to go through every single game that happened this week, and we're going to keep it pretty quick, pretty dirty. Try to get you out of here in 30 to 45 minutes. In the future, we're going to have a little bit more beat writer interaction specifically on the show. But right now, you mostly get me. And I do have a beat writer voicemail that I'll be playing for you concerning one of the big blow up games that we had from a rookie. So stick around for that. It's going to kind of split the difference and sit on the fence between like a fantasy style and a general NFL show. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Feel free to leave your feedback or whatever if you're part of the Discord there. If you're not a member on our website, you can sign up through that and then use the code podcast for 50% off and get into that Discord server and talk with all of the guys here at 32 as well with other players. We do a lot of things over there on Sundays. We've been doing start sit and starting to help each other out with things over there. So a lot of fun. But if you have any feedback or questions, of course, you can bring them there. All right, let's just go ahead and get right into it. I'm not going to spend as much time probably on the primetime games as I'm assuming most of you actually watched those and probably have your own takeaways from that. But we'll start off with Thursday with the Bills over the Dolphins, 31-10. Obviously, the big story here is the Tua concussion. He's not going to retire. A lot of people have been asking me specifically about that and whether or not that's a real possibility. He's come out and said that directly. Those have been the reports that he's not seeking to retire anytime soon. The only way that I possibly see that happening personally is, say, if he were to have another one very shortly after or sometime this year that's very serious. I don't know. That's the only real situation. And then maybe he evaluates that in the offseason. But right now, I don't see that happening. I will say that if we have a Skylar Thompson start this coming week, that for fantasy, Tyreek, Achane, only people that I'm starting. I'm not really even considering any of the other options. Thompson, I do not have a lot of faith in, but there are some rumors that just came out a little bit today that some people in the league believe that we may see Tua try to play, and it was a Thursday game, so that may happen, but we will see. When he gets cleared, obviously we'll know that. If he doesn't, then of course he won't be playing, so keep an eye on that. From the Bills side of things, obviously James Cook is the storyline there. He has defied all expectations, at least from me especially, and I don't think that we can take away too much from the passing game. There were not a lot of targets for anybody because it was just a pretty non-competitive game from the get-go, and especially when it comes to Keon Coleman and his lack of targets, I don't think he received a single one. Don't get concerned about that at the moment right now. The Bills had no reason to throw, and so they didn't. Next, we had the Chargers over the Panthers, 26-3. Storyline out today, of course, or late yesterday, is that we are not going to be having any Bryce Young on our screens anymore, at least for the time being, as he has been benched. Now, as far as the team is concerned, that is good news for your fantasy assets, if you care about those, and just the evaluation of the team in general. Xavier Legette, of course, included in that. It also, in my opinion, makes Jonathan Brooks a more viable option when he does return, hopefully within the next couple of weeks here. With Bryce Young leading the team, it just did not feel like something that was going to be like you're going to get a lot of volume on a team that was just bad. And now Andy Dalton starting for them, I don't know that he's going to be good, but he's going to be better. I know that for a fact. And with that being the case, you should at least get some more opportunities, some more points scored there. J.K. Dobbins, of course, led the Chargers in rushing. The team in general had over 200 rushing yards. I believe Dobbins with like 130 something. So start him every week, and especially in good matchups, that's going to be good. The Panthers, even going forward, regardless of who their quarterback is, start any of the running backs that are facing them. They are just getting ran on because you don't have to throw. So that's an important thing to note there. Next, Seahawks beat the Patriots 23-20 in a close game. The story here is Jackson Smith-Njigba went 12 for 117. I think he had maybe upwards of 18 total targets. It was a lot. If not, it was 16 or so. And they're obviously trying to get him the ball. If you were watching that game, you could tell there were some very well-designed plays for him, that they were intentionally trying to go to him, get him rolling there. And then there was also some down the field stuff and some key moments where he played a big role for them. So that was good to see. Antonio Gibson, as a side note for the Patriots, also looked really good. I know we've seen stuff from him in the past, and his inconsistencies kept him out of ever really getting his job back in Washington, but he's a pretty good 1-2 part there of the punch with Ramondre Stevenson. So keep an eye on that. They also have mentioned they wanted to bring more in the screen game this year. Prior to the beginning of the year, they wanted to say that they were the best screen team in the NFL. We haven't seen that happen yet. And so, at least with the running backs. So I'll be interested to see if Gibson becomes more of a part of that and see how that can develop. Also, regarding like DK Metcalf, I got to defend my guy, Christian Gonzalez, just for a second. That touchdown he had was awesome. I mean, for the Seahawks, of course, but that was a busted coverage. Kyle Duggar, the safety for the Patriots, took that upon himself and said that it was his responsibility to figure all of that out. And I just want to defend Christian Gonzalez for a second. He didn't give that one up. And the Patriots cornerback per Next Gen Stats, Christian Gonzalez, aligned across from DK Metcalf on 36 of 44 routes, which is 82%. Metcalf was targeted 7 times against Gonzalez, coming away with 3 receptions for 24 yards. Metcalf caught all 7 of his targets against other defenders for 105 yards. And of course, the aforementioned touchdown. So in the future, if you've got anybody going up against the Patriots defense and there's a possibility that Gonzalez is going to be shadowing them, doesn't mean they can't have a productive game otherwise if they're a truly dominant wide receiver. But something to note, he has been everything that the Patriots have hoped he would be in these last couple of weeks here. The Saints, my goodness, I don't know what it takes for us to believe at this point. I don't know if I still believe that it's happening. I think they have the second highest amount of points scored through 2 weeks of any team ever. The Saints whooped the Cowboys 44-19. And again, I don't know how many times they'll have to do something like this for us to actually believe. I still don't know if I do personally, but I don't know how you can't. I would say that we have to be patient with Chris Olave. 4 for 81 is not a bad game. I think a lot of people are still pretty disappointed in his outings, and I get that. But this was just another Kamara game, which, 4 touchdowns for that guy? Absolutely ridiculous. I kind of wrote Alvin Kamara off. I wrote the whole Saints team off for the most part. Clint Kubiak is cleaning up down there as offensive coordinator. But and then also Rashid Shaheed has done well and taken advantage of his opportunities. They only had 11 total receptions for the team in the game. So similar to that Buffalo game, it's just not something I'm going to hang a ton of wide receiver assumptions on. And as for the Cowboys, it's become clear to me personally, I don't want anybody on that team from a fantasy standpoint other than CeeDee Lamb and Dak. As I was kind of speculating and potentially fearing, we talked with David Hellman just before the season starts here, and it just is kind of gross. I don't know that anybody is going to be particularly great in that running back room. And while Ferguson is out with that injury, I don't know that there's anybody other than the 2 we mentioned in Lamb and Dak that I'm interested in. Tampa beat Detroit partially due to some coaching errors there, 26-16. Are the Bucs legit? I mean, with Dave Canales leaving, I think a lot of people, including myself, assume that the Bucs wouldn't have much of a shot. Right now, they're 2-0 in that division there. I'm not sure, but I love Chris Godwin finally getting legitimate slot reps. We saw that increase again this week, which is great. That's where he belongs. And while he's not always going to be outshining Mike Evans, I do think you should see a lot more of him this year than last, which is great to see. You can feel comfortable with him, and my dynasty team certainly appreciates that. Baker Mayfield, kind of proven to be a guy who can run an offense, even if it isn't perfect. And, he's not been perfect. He had an interception this last week. For the Lions, they outgained Tampa by 250 yards. and still lost, which is just a weird one. So despite the low score there, they had a very high yardage total, and that's just odd. So in general, for the Lions offense, I wouldn't be too concerned, but I will say the biggest L that I have to take this year is Jamison Williams. I hated on him pretty hardcore. And if you're a listener to either the podcast or you watch the show here, then you know that I was not in on him whatsoever. I still have my doubts in the sense that Sam Laporta just has not been super productive yet. And if he's everything we thought he was last year, I don't see how you continue to have a lack of targets and production for Sam Laporta and a sustained situation with Jamison Williams where he's constantly doing what he's done so far. That being said, he's already outperformed what I thought he would do, so that's an L for me, and we'll see how that goes. I do believe Sam Laporta is bound to be more productive, but a game in where they needed a win and passed for over 300 yards, it does have to be on your radar that he only had a couple targets and 13 yards. I think he had 3 targets, 2 receptions, and 13 yards. So that definitely is concerning, even if it is something that I expect to change. The Packers stunned the Colts 16-10 with Malik Willis. I really thought it was a joke. I was messaging with a couple people, and just the fact that they were even considering starting Malik Willis. I know maybe they didn't have much of a choice in the sense that they if they brought somebody else in, it would have been pretty short notice. So that being said, Willis gets his first W of the season for the Packers with him leading the way, or rather Josh Jacobs leading the way. That ultimately boiled down to, Josh Jacobs carrying the load, 151 yards, I believe it was. And Malik Willis just not making a backbreaking mistake. That felt like that was kind of his job while he was out there. Just don't lose it for the Packers. Jacobs did fumble the ball at the goal line, so fantasy managers would have been happier, of course, if that went in. It got turned over to the Colts, and Anthony Richardson completed exactly 50% of his passes and threw 3 interceptions, one coming on a Hail Mary. So even if you only want to give him the 2, the other 2 were very concerning. One was just an awful decision to a defensive back who's clearly inside of his intended target. There, just zipped it right to the defender there. Easy grab. And then he also sailed one into multiple Green Bay defenders, just overshooting his target on another. So, he's going to give you boom games, and he is not always going to be a 50%, thrower there. But the jury's still out on if the Colts can win with this guy long term, especially from behind. So I am going to take a brief break here to cough, and I will be right back. Excuse me. I'm actually going to grab one of these cough drops here. So for all of you who are following here on the live, this is the result, like I said, of that cold I had earlier. I might cut it out for everybody listening. I'll be back in just a second, guys. All right, I'm back. I'm going to try not to cough too much into the microphone here. Sorry, like I said, still getting over that sickness. So we'll see how that goes. The Jets squeeze past the Titans 24-17. And Braylon Allen scored twice this game, once through the air and once on the ground. He saw an increased usage, which was interesting. I wouldn't bother picking him up or anything in fantasy if you were thinking about that. If anything, I think it just shows that they're trying to make Breece do a little bit less heavy lifting this season, just give him a little bit of a break. I don't think it really caps the upside of Breece Hall, as he'll still be, targeted a ton as he was in this game, probably in most games with, 20 opportunities anyways. So the Titans obviously are a story coming out of this, and Will Levis just made an awful, awful decision. Brian Callahan on that interception was asked, and he said, quote, he's a grown up and he knows better. I mean, if you listen to the full segment there, it just was, I just wouldn't want to be Will Levis. It just is kind of embarrassing in the way that he was speaking about it. Calvin Ridley still had a really good game. I think you should be relatively confident with him. Of course, moving forward, he's kind of the go-to guy there and should continue to be, in my opinion. Tajay Spears, the running back, did roll his ankle, but should be good to go after some healing, I think. So I do expect Pollard to be the guy for the most part moving forward, but that split is going to be close to like a 60-40 still at best. So the production that you might be getting out of Pollard, I think, will be in that vein of opportunity. The Vikings over the 49ers, 23-17. Brock Purdy, I think it is apparent here, when things are out of structure, sometimes Brock Purdy struggles against pressure. Now, of course, all quarterbacks are going to be worse against pressure. That's just the nature of the game. But with the situation there now, CMC and Deebo Samuel are both going to be out multiple weeks. We had those reports coming in this last week, and then Deebo Samuel over the last 24 hours or so. The 49ers, they'll have a chance to get right against the Rams with a young defense this coming week, and Ayuk will have to step it up a bit. You still got Ayuk. You still got Kittle. You should see some consistent volume, especially for Kittle, without Deebo being around. When it comes to the Vikings, I don't know what this, Darnold resurgence is. It's crazy to me, but, he throws to the wide receiver, the best wide receiver in football, and Justin Jefferson. Turns out that works pretty well. You tend to get like 97-yard touchdowns. So Aaron Jones did get dinged up, and Ty Chandler did have one more carry than he did. Ty Chandler, I think, was 10, and Aaron Jones with 9. But, that was mostly to keep Jones healthy. He got a little bit dinged up, as we mentioned, and Jones is obviously going to keep catching the ball, something that Chandler isn't really going to do. The Commanders beat the Giants 21-18. You've probably already heard this, but the Giants are the only team to have scored 3 touchdowns and lost, while the opposing team never scored a touchdown. I mean, I don't know that there's probably anybody here who believes otherwise, but Daniel Jones is bad. I don't know when he's going to be benched, but it's closer than farther. I mean, I guess they don't have too much else to go to or look forward to. Brian Dable on the sideline turning into a tomato, of course. Not good over there. Honestly, I was looking at their schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost every game from here on out, but they do play Carolina in week 10. So, we'll see. Maybe they get a couple, because it is hard to lose every single game, even if you're trying. For Washington, I don't really think you can trust any of their receivers other than maybe Ertz. I wanted Terry to be the guy there, but, with the way that their offense is running under the coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, I think he's kind of just showing us why he got fired in Arizona. That being said, I mean, it is only 2 weeks and you are working with a rookie quarterback. So, in some part, Jaden Daniels, we said this a lot before the season began. Jaden Daniels scrambles to run. He doesn't scramble to throw. And I think we're seeing a little bit of the results of that from a receiving standpoint. Terry McLaurin still had 6 receptions, I think, but for 22 yards. And that's just not going to get it done in the NFL. We'll make it through. Here. We did have a question about Kenny McIntosh. Will he be traded? Why is Charbonnet getting 100% when he's one of the most inefficient running backs in the league? Charbonnet was a second-round pick, right? So that's why. Exhausted rebuttals here. I'll show your comment there just for everybody who's watching to see. So he's going to get the opportunities when Kenneth Walker isn't healthy, and that's just the way it's going to be. And we'll see what happens after the end of the season here. But yeah, that's my only answer quick on that. Moving on to the Browns. They, I guess, got right against the Jaguars and beat them 18-13. I still do not trust Deshaun Watson. I don't know that many people would, of course. less than 200 yards passing, did score once on the ground. The Jerome Ford usage was interesting. It's not great if you're a fantasy manager there. He split with Deonta Foreman there. Foreman actually had more opportunities by quite a few being like 5 or 6. I don't think it's because they were trying. I do think rather that it was because they were trying to kind of like run out the game. But it does mean that they kind of have their roles. So something to keep an eye out on. For the Jaguars, you definitely need to worry. It feels like head coach Peterson is now kind of like coaching for his job. Tank Bigsby got injured and didn't have any opportunities because of that. But the word apparently is that he'll be okay. So we'll see how that goes. Christian Kirk should be more productive than he has been. A single reception each of the last 2 weeks. But he had a bad week against Buffalo. If he has a bad week against Buffalo this coming week, I probably am dumping him if I have him on a fantasy roster. The Raiders then shocked the Ravens and the world 26-23. I don't know even really what to say with this one, if I'm being honest with you guys. Like, the Ravens totally blew it. You're supposed to have, one of the best rushing attacks in the league, and you let it slip like that. You have a kicker who you're supposed to rely on for, you paid him. I think made him the highest kicker this offseason again. Excuse me, guys. I really apologize. Flowers and Bowers both had a good game. Continue to start them both, of course. And you may also be able to finally have some trust in Davante Adams, but I don't expect the Raiders to score 26 points too often. So that being said, I think, they're going to both him and Bowers. Obviously, Bowers being a tight end, you're less dependent on touchdowns if they're productive from a catch and a yardage standpoint, and Bowers seems to be that. But yeah, that's my thoughts there. The Cardinals smashed the Rams 41-10, and for that, I actually have Tyler Drake of Arizona Sports, who is here to help us out with that.
Hey, this is Tyler Drake with Arizona Sports. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a huge bounce back performance in week 2 against the Rams after a very, very lackluster week 1. And I think we all saw the changes on the field. Obviously, he was moved around a little more. Kyler looked his way a lot more. I think the very first pass went his way, and they took more shots down the field, as we saw. I mean, everything everybody has talked about throughout the draft process, throughout training camp, it all really came to fruition at this home opening win over the Rams. Huge win for the Cardinals. Obviously, Kyler Murray had a perfect passer rating, 158.3. So a big showing from him. But yeah, Marvin, it really, I think, comes down to just getting more reps with Kyler in a game situation. And really, you could tell he was thinking a lot less out there. And I think that's the big thing moving forward. And he showed his speed, because I know that was a big thing after week 1, but I think he got up to like 20 miles an hour at one point, according to Next Gen Stats. So really big improvement there. And the big thing I think that everybody's kind of talking about out here, at least, is the fact that he's more concerned with the 4 incompletions that Kyler Murray had that were all towards him, that he really wants to iron out. Talked to head coach Jonathan Gannon today, actually, and he said, yep, he knows he left more meat on the bone. He's got a couple things he's got to iron out, and we'll see what that looks like moving forward. And it's so just really, I mean, that's a huge example of just the work ethic and the accountability that the rookie already has. Like, he's focused more on the bad that he had, the little bit of bad that he had, as opposed to this huge 130-yard game. 2-touchdown game. That first touchdown was impressive too. I think he only had 0.7 yards from the sideline to make that snag. So huge win there for the Cardinals, and a huge home opening game for Marvin Harrison Jr. And next up is a Detroit Lions team, and that's going to be real tough for this Cardinals team, looking to keep that momentum going into week 3.
All right, Tyler, thanks as always for that. Again, check Tyler out, Tyler Drake of Arizona Sports. The Rams, as far as they go, they have a decimated offensive line that just keeps piling on the injuries. They may get a few players back on the line here soon. But Cooper Kupp now, of course, is expected to miss, quote, extended time. So with Puka Nacua out, with Cooper Kupp out, the mission now becomes, in my mind, keeping Matthew Stafford safe and healthy. They face the Niners, Bears, Packers in the next 3 weeks, all of whom have either a great pass rush or defense just in general. So that will be a challenge headed into the week 6 bye. I'm very, very concerned about the Rams and anything we may be able to see from them going forward. Kyren Williams, of course, going to get his opportunities, but in general, getting a win is going to be really tough, I think, for the Rams over the next 3 weeks. The Steelers, this is, man, most boring game of the week. Steelers over the Broncos, 13-6. Bo Nix just struggling, man. Struggling, at this point in the season, had a critical interception in the end zone. Just having a tough couple of weeks here. No touchdowns, 4 picks on the year. No rookie quarterback has a touchdown at this point, which is still kind of wild to me. Steelers, look to be playing Justin Fields again. We got that information recently. They're going to be playing Justin Fields as Russell Wilson is still coming off of that injury that he gave himself while pushing a sled at the end of training camp there. Still can't believe he did that. I'm avoiding all the Steelers if I can, with the exception of maybe Pat Freiermuth and then Najee Harris, I guess. But the game scripts for them are going to just be gross no matter what happens. And probably that's the case even if Russell Wilson is starting, but he should be a better passer at least than Justin Fields. And right now that's just kind of a struggle. The Chiefs and the refs overcame the Bengals 26-25. I do joke a bit about the refs there, but that was a extremely down the wire game, as many of you probably saw. Bengals probably should have won it, in my opinion. There are 3 key takeaways from this game, in my view. 1, Mike Gesicki may be a weekly start while T. Higgins is out. Rashee Rice is the clear number 1 for the Chiefs, and in my opinion, that includes Travis Kelce. 3, with running back Isaiah Pacheco gone, now due to a fractured fibula, the RB room, the running back room there is just gross. Even if they elevate the newly signed Kareem Hunt from the practice squad, I think they're going to be running through the air. To me, now also including that Hollywood Brown being out for the season, that means basically that Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce are going to eat. So when I say that Rice is the number 1 there, and probably the number 1 target in general, I'm not saying Kelce is going to be bad, but anybody who had hopes for Worthy, I do think he just kind of showed some of his limitations in that Bengals game. And Pat Mahomes did try to go to him a couple times, but when he did, it didn't always work out. And I think Rice is going to be that guy, more short to intermediate area, where you're going to see that running through the air kind of concept. We'll see how that continues. For the Texans and the Bears, Texans beat the Bears 19-13. Just felt kind of like the Texans kept giving the Bears opportunities to come back into the game. But the pass rush just kept getting to Caleb Williams. It sounds like a cliche at this point, but Williams is just kind of continuing to learn the reality of the NFL and learn that what he used to get away with, he can't all the time. People are giving him a especially hard time. But he is running for his life a lot. He has yet to throw a passing touchdown, as we mentioned. In fact, none of the rookies have. Again, Nico Collins is a serious force and should be the guy for the Texans for the year, in my opinion. If you look at the box score, you're going to be disappointed in Tank Dell, of course, and say that he had an awful day. And he did in terms of production, but he was given plenty of opportunities that just didn't go his way. So don't totally write him off there. And finally, last night's primetime game, the Falcons over the Eagles, 22-21. Another game that just came down to the wire. Tons of lead changes. Was very exciting to see. Glad that we got a good Monday night game there. Excellent to watch. And it sets the Falcons on the right track. If they would have lost this game, they play the Chiefs, I believe, this coming week. And then, that just, if you go 0-3, people are screaming for Michael Penix. They kind of already had some rumblings about that this week, but this should kind of calm those down. Kirk Cousins there with the game-winning drive at the end in primetime at night on a Monday. So, on the road. So that's a pretty big deal for Kirk Cousins. You watched this game, so I'm not going to belabor it too much longer, but Darnell Mooney and Ray McCloud are getting more targets than fantasy managers probably would want for the Falcons, but I do think that London should be fine, and I'd worry more about the viability of Kyle Pitts, personally. If I did have to predict, it's that he's going to be more inconsistent at the expense of the ball being spread around so much, but it's still only week 2 as far as results are concerned. We're moving on to week 3 here, and we'll have to see how that ball gets spread in the future here. So that's kind of what I got for you. We managed to hit our 30-minute mark despite myself coughing halfway through every team. I'll take 2 really, really quick questions here at the end since you guys commented. Feel free to do that in the future. Justin wants to know, how high should we be on Jordan Mason for Dynasty? As soon as Christian McCaffrey gets back, he's going to have a pretty limited role. Christian McCaffrey signed a long-term deal. This isn't a long-term injury in the sense of a next year thing. So if you need him to win, to a couple games right now, I don't know that I would pay too much for him. I know that's not super helpful. Excuse me. I don't know that I'd play a second, though, even though that's probably at least what the person who owns him is going to want. News on Tua going to IR. Is that something new that came through? I'll take a look here. Oh, there we go. Dolphins are placing quarterback Tua Tagovailoa on the injured reserve. Thank you for messaging me. I don't try to look at my phone too much during these, so I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a big deal. Well, okay. So that's 4 weeks of Skylar Thompson, unless they bring somebody else in, which is gross. Committed to placing no timeline on him as he works through a deliberate process and eventual return to play. I don't know what to say about that other than I hope they bring somebody else in. Otherwise, at best, you're starting Tyreek and HN. And I don't know what else to tell you there. That's not great for the Dolphins, and you could probably put a headstone over their season this year, unfortunately, for them. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining. Make sure to check us out at our website, 32beatwriters.com. You can use the code podcast if you want to become a member over there. You get 50% off of a pro membership. Make sure to keep up there for all of the most recent news, some relevant information from the beat writers. We're going to be doing weekly question and answers, burning questions. So look out for that as well this week. For all of the 32 Beat Writers staff, I'm Zach Heiduk, and we will see you next time.